Welcome back, debaters. Today we're going to talk about the questions of the ages. What is right? What is wrong? How do we live together? And what should we do to have a civil society? In other words, what's morality? Morals are of or relating to the principles of right or wrong in behavior. We call it ethical or ethics. Therefore, what is morality? But it's a doctrine or a system where we decide what is right and wrong in our society. Now, many societies have different ideas about how that should be done. We often, most of us in this class, come from the Christian background, Christian doctrines. But that's not the only one there is. We also have the Force. Obi-Wan Kenobi knew the right side, the dark side, and the light side of the Force. And we have Dr. Martin Luther King, who was determined to help us create an understanding of what is right or wrong in how we treat our fellow human beings. The real question comes is what do we do when both ways are the right way to do it? How do we decide what's the best way? This whole question of morality then comes into play much more strongly, and we have to find ways to come up with answers for that. If we're going for a doctrine or a system of moral conduct of what we need to decide to do, then how do we make those decisions? A really good example of one that historically you should know is the Declaration of Independence. It's essentially laying out the rules for what we think is wrong with the governing by the King of England of the 13 colonies in 1776. When we look at things, we try to figure out what do we value the most? What's the most important idea? And we try to set up our good and our wrong, our right and our wrongs around what we value the most. So how do we know what is right? That is a really good question. What if there were no rules? How would people choose to behave if there were no consequences to their actions? I have no rules. I can do whatever I want. Does that sound good to you? If that's the way you want to live, then I have no reason not to steal your stuff and kill you. Do you have a problem with that? This is called the state of nature. This is where there are no rules, there are no laws, there are no governors, nobody's in charge of anything. You are strictly responsible only to yourself. So you can do whatever you want. But the consequences of that are you have no protection. Anybody can do it to you because you can do it to anybody. Nobody's going to get in trouble for doing anything to you because there's no social consequences. Right or wrong is not an issue. Therefore, why should anybody shun you or punish you or hurt you because you did something to somebody else? Another consequence is that there's no cooperation between people. Why should I work with you? I get no benefits in the state of nature from working with you. Thomas Hobbes said, life in the state of nature is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. It can be rational, but there is no morality to it. There are no restrictions. You can do whatever you want, whatever you need to do to survive. There's nothing wrong. Nobody's going to tell you you're in trouble for doing something because you have full freedom and total liberty. However, you need to be aware that strength equals power. Whoever has the most power, the biggest stick, they can tell you what you have to do because they're going to hurt you and take away your life or your liberty because there are no consequences to them. Thomas Hobbes said the rational people will agree to limit their personal rights in order for protection, so that there are rules governing how we behave. We need a social contract. We need an agreement about how we will live together. When we create that contract, we decide what is moral and what is immoral. That is critically important. We make the decisions. This idea comes from a book called Leviathan by Thomas Hobbes. When we create a social contract, we include everybody in our community. And people are born into the social contract without their consent. It's not like we all get a piece of paper and we sign it and say, yes, I'm going to agree to these rules. No, if you're born into this community, you have to agree to abide by the rules. That's why it's so important that we make sure that people understand what their responsibilities are, what are good and what are wrong in our societies. Thomas Hobbes lived during a time of great social upheaval in England. The king was overthrown. Now, this is a big deal because up until that point, there was a concept called the divine right of kings, which said that all the kings of England and all the kings anywhere are there because God has put them there, and there is no limit to what they can do or to whom they can do it. It is amoral. There are no morals that are applied to the kings. They can do whatever they want. Well, that's not really the case, according to Hobbes. Every man has the liberty to use his own power for the preservation of his own nature, for the preservation of his life. Hobbes was reacting to the divine right of kings philosophy and how the king needed to be removed because he had that mindset and he wouldn't give it up. We have the liberty to do anything to protect our lives. There is no law in nature because there is no one to enforce the laws, according to Hobbes, so we need a big boss. And that big boss is a person called a sovereign. And their job is to keep us in line so that if somebody misbehaves according to our morality, the big boss will come in and stop it. Essentially, it's the person with the biggest stick. A few years after Leviathan was written, John Locke read it, and he wrote 2 treatises of government. The first treatise of government was about the divine right of kings. He also didn't approve. He said that humans have natural rights. Life, liberty, and property do not exist because men have made laws. On the contrary, the fact that life, liberty, and property existed beforehand are what caused men to make laws in the first place. That's a pretty profound statement. Essentially, what he's saying is God gave us these rights. Nature gave us these rights. We have a sovereign. We have a governor because we have these things and we must protect them. John Locke asks us the question, what is the role of government? It is to preserve property. Now, property is what we own. It's not just our stuff. It also includes our lives and our liberties. Now, we have life and liberty. If we don't have life, liberty and possessions don't mean anything. Liberty is the freedom to do what we want to do. And that is the right that we have to give up some of in order to create a society. We also have to give up property in order to support that governance to protect those other rights. So that's the role of government according to John Locke. Civil government is necessary, but it's only by consent of the governed. Have you ever seen this movie? I love this movie. This is National Treasure.
If it's any consolation, you had me convinced.
It's not.
I was thinking, what if we go public, plaster the story all over the internet? It's not like we have our reputations to worry about. Although, I don't think that's exactly going to scare Ian away.
180 years of searching, and I'm 3 feet away. Of all the ideas that became the United States, there's a line here that's at the heart of all the others. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for their future security. People don't talk that way anymore.
Beautiful. Huh. No idea what you said.
It means if there's something wrong, those who have the ability to take action have the responsibility to take action. I'm gonna steal it.
What?
I'm gonna steal the Declaration of Independence.
Ben?
If you ever have a chance to see that movie, you should go see it. Jean-Jacques Rousseau is the final of the big three of the social contract theories in Western civilization. I'm sure that all civilizations have got some sort of format on how they decide who governs and how governance should be managed. I just don't know the others in how they apply to Western civ. So we're going to stick with these three. Jean-Jacques Rousseau was French, Swiss, and he lived from the early 1700s to just before the French Revolution. Jean-Jacques Rousseau had a different take on natural rights. He said life, liberty, and property do not exist because man have made laws. It was because we had those laws. They existed before, because we had those things, they existed beforehand, and that is what caused men to make laws in the first place. So let's take a look at these in kind of a concrete little concise form. Hobbes said that in the state of nature, there are no laws, and people surrender some of their rights to the sovereign, who has power to protect. John Locke said the law of nature are life, liberty, and property, and people have to surrender their rights to the sovereign to protect their property. Rousseau said general will. General will is the concept of how we have to submit ourselves to come to an agreement to create a society. Life, liberty, and property are all good things, but people govern together to protect rights and society. There is no one single sovereign who is absolute. In many ways, they agree with each other. In many ways, they build on each other. But it comes back to the question, how does morality work in these systems? What is their morality? How do we live together? With Hobbes, it's all about power. With Locke, it's all about natural rights. With Rousseau, we have to exchange our rights in order to have a civil society and care for everyone in it. So here's the question. What do you think of the statement, I can steal your apple if you can't stop me? Hobbes says this is absolutely true. But you can do anything you want up to and including killing me in order to stop me from stealing your apple. Or you can do anything you want up to and including killing me in order to take my apple from me. Hobbes says, it's my apple and I may decide what to do with it. Now, Hobbes recognizes that there's an important part in being cooperative with each other, and the cooperation is enforced by a governor, a sovereign, a leader. Rousseau says it's my apple, but I must consider what is best to do with it. Is it best for me to give it to other people? Is it best for me to keep it? That is how that society works. So let me ask you, what should happen if somebody takes your apple? We're going to be discussing this in class in the coming week, so I need for you to think about your apple. And I would like for you to bring 2 balls to class this week. This is going to be for class on the 14th of February, so it's Valentine's Day. Make sure that your name is written on your balls, not stuck on with a sticker or tape, because I can't guarantee that those are going to still be there when we're done playing with the balls. So bring a big one and a little one. I don't care what they are. I don't care what they are in proportion to sizes. I don't care if it's a football and a ping pong ball. Whatever works for you. They don't need to bounce. You just need to be able to carry them in and carry them out. And we will discuss the state of nature. I will see you then. Do not forget, there will be a test that you are supposed to take on the Bridges Toolbox. Hopefully I'll get it right. I'm really sorry about this past week. I don't know what I did wrong, but I really screwed that up. Thanks for listening to today's lecture, and we'll see you next time in Bridges Debate Class.